We are loving the Stanford alumni from all around the world who are getting hyped up for tonight's game. Welcome back to the pregame show presented by 76. USC and Stanford on tap tonight. We got the band behind us. I'm not sure if you guys can even hear me, but it doesn't even matter. Evan Moore, Nigel Burton, and the only Heisman Trophy winner in the history of Stanford football, a legend here on the farm in Jim Plunkett. Jim, we appreciate you spending some time with us today. I imagine every time you come back on the farm, the memories just sort of start flooding back.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Hey guys, pipe down over here. We're asking Jim Plunkett some questions. Hey, what's it like being back on here? I imagine every time you step on campus, I know you're around this program a lot, but the memories from your playing days, not too long ago, come flooding back.
A few years ago, but yeah, actually, obviously it was a great time, in my life and playing football here at Stanford. Actually, we had a dinner last night, and the tight end, both wide receivers, the guard. We had about 7 guys who played on that Rose Bowl team from '71. So it's a lot of fun coming back here, seeing your friends, telling lies about how good we used to be. It's always fun.
You get better as older you get, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So I want to put into perspective the last decade of Stanford football.
Sure.
So we've had 9+ seasons, or 9 seasons of 8+ wins.
Right.
From 1970 to 2008, we had 9 total. So just curious, you've watched a lot of Stanford football, the last decade of Stanford football. Can you put that into perspective, historically speaking, what you've seen?
Well, obviously the game has changed, but also I think Stanford's looked at across the nation as, not only an academic institution, but a place to go play sports, right, and football in particular, as far as I'm concerned. And, they recruit, and they recruit all over the country now, more so than they did before. A lot of the players came out of California, period, Southern California, Northern California, and now they recruit all over the country. They're on TV a lot. Kids across the country get to see, how good this Stanford football program is, and and they buy into it, and the coaches go out there and recruit them, and I think a lot of the success is due, obviously Stanford's had a lot of great skilled athletes, but they come in there and they get the meat on both sides of the football, offensively and defensively. They can block, pass block, run block. They can do it all, and I think that's one of the biggest differences in some of the success that Stanford's had over the years.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, obviously there's not a whole lot of people who have more perspective of Stanford football than you, and I'm curious on what your view on a guy like Bryce Love in terms of the history of Stanford football. There's so many great players that have come through these doors, like yourself, and I guess this guy here too.
Oh, yeah.
I'm curious, where do you think a guy like Bryce Love stands in the history of all these guys who have come through these doors?
Well, he's already shown his first 3 years of how he can play football. He's a dynamic player. He's a game breaker. Once you think you have him, you don't. He's a special guy. He's not size-wise, not the biggest guy in the world, but he's got great speed. He breaks tackles. He's the guy that everybody would like on their team somewhere along the line. Not even necessarily in that position, but somebody who inspires others.
You knew we would go quarterback position at some point. We've been pretty spoiled here the last decade.
Right.
With Hogan, Andrew Luck. Everyone knows who those guys are.
Sure.
What you've seen from KJ Costello thus far. So middle of last season when he started to get more consistent play time, and then week 1 of this year. What are your thoughts so far?
Well, I'm very impressed with him. He threw a couple of passes, one to Whiteside on a touchdown that, people were in his face. He was falling back. It was an all-arm throw. He got it 40 yards down the field for the score, and then and very accurately.
Right.
And because you don't always get to step into every pass you throw, and when you can do it when you're not on balance, when you don't have a pass rush. And then when you do have one and you can make those kinds of throw, you have a lot going for you and you're kind of special.
Yeah.
Now, Jim, I think one of the narratives that we've talked about over the last decade is how meaningful this USC-Stanford rivalry has become. But this rivalry goes obviously way back. Sure. What do you remember about playing USC in your playing days? Because from what I understand, you lost to him for the first 2 years, and then your senior year you were having none of that.
And even that was hard enough. But yeah, you're right. We lost 27-24 here, and we missed 3 field goals, or else we should have had that victory. The second game, we lost on the last play of the season. As we went ahead with like 2 minutes to go, they drove down, kicked the field goal, and beat us. That's hard to take after 2 years. And finally, our senior year, we were able to knock them off, and pretty handily. But in those days, the road to the Rose Bowl was through SC, so you had to beat those guys, and we eventually did it. We wish we could have done it more, but it was a big step, and it was the first time in 19 years that Stanford had gone back to the Rose Bowl. So those were big moments in our Stanford career.
Ash, that's the tip of the iceberg, by the way. I'll bet you he can recount each game, each half, each quarter, exactly how it played out.
Yeah, not quite, but
Close.
the important parts
what was your
I can.
favorite play of that game then? When
Which
you guys
one?
beat them? When you guys beat them your senior year?
Oh, me
Which
handing
quarter?
off to Jackie Brown and him picking up yards every time I did, you know. I think it was the goal line stand by several occasions by our Stanford defense. They were, kind of tested time and time again, and they came through big time. And I think it was their play around the goal line that helped save the win for us.
Well, so often it does come down to that Stanford defense. All right, we've had some Stanford players come very close in the Heisman Trophy race over the last few years. You are still the only Stanford player who has won the Heisman Trophy. Big picture, what would it mean for Stanford to get another Heisman Trophy in that trophy case, Jim?
I think it would be terrific. Obviously, and Andrew Luck and Christian McCaffrey, Toby Gerhardt, those are all people who certainly qualified to become a Heisman Trophy winner. There's no doubt about it. And Bryce Love obviously fits in that category. But some of the voting is done from east of the Mississippi, and so they have more votes on that side of the country. Number two, I was in Washington, D.C. when they played a game. Stanford played a game last year. Didn't start till 10:30 at night. So they're not getting the attention that other schools might get otherwise. But you got to keep plugging away, and it would be great for Stanford. It would be great fun for me because now I can go to the Heisman dinner every year with a teammate, former from Stanford anyway, and that would mean a lot. And Stanford certainly, after the last several guys who didn't make it, certainly deserves a Heisman Trophy winner.
Well, speaking of former teammates, Evan and I were talking. Yeah, we're talking earlier about. It seems there seems to be a different deal when guys graduate from here and then go on to the next level. I think of yourself, Evan, Richard Sherman, and now you got guys like Christian McCaffrey. They seem to elevate their play even more than we even thought. Is there something special? Is there something that is learned here that allows guys to be that much more successful at the next level?
I don't know if it's typically here, but I think players, we're relatively young when we're going through Stanford and our college careers. I just think they get better. If they stay healthy, they've got more experience under their belt. They just continue to get better. They're hard workers. They pick up offenses or defenses quickly, and they continue to improve their skills as they go on. And I'm not necessarily sure if it's particularly true for this university, but it's certainly they're a big part of that trend.
All right, Jim Plunkett, the only Heisman Trophy winner for Stanford, a legend here on the farm, a two-time Super Bowl champ. You know that your legacy is still alive and well because in the Stanford football press box, every year your name is some version of the Wi-Fi password. So if you're any worried about your legacy,
I didn't know that.
Don't worry about it. Yeah, I don't know if I was supposed to give that away, but thank you and enjoy the game tonight.
Sure,
we appreciate your
welcome.
time.
Thanks for coming on.
Good to be on
Appreciate
here.
it.